Welcome back to Tu-Vie, where we talk about all things TV, movie, and entertainment. Today, we're going to be talking about episode 2 of Moon Knight. So, spoiler warning if you haven't seen the show yet, or even the first episode, which I may be hinting at. So, if you guys haven't seen either episode or just this one, go watch now. It's fantastic. I am really enjoying this show. The adventure and the mysticism and the horror elements is all just so incredible. And the new character study we're doing with Stephen Grant, with Mark Spector, and Khonshu, Moon Knight, everything in between, kind of like how we did the first character study with Iron Man back in 2008. And here we are, just doing this all over again is so good. And I like the pacing, and it doesn't feel like it has to be a part of the MCU to be good. Like, it doesn't have to have a reference to the Hulk or anything to stand out completely. So where this episode begins, we pick off from the events that ended in episode 1, kind of how it normally starts. But this is specifically talking about how Stephen is trying to figure out what is going on and what is dream and what is reality. So we see him on the way to work. They guarded off the area where the Jackal was attacking him originally. They sealed it off and they're trying to do maintenance. And Mark actually speaks with the security officer and looks over the tape. But the thing is, no one can see the Jackal. All they see is just Stephen running around and hiding and cowering, but no one sees what happens. It's like it didn't exist. But the only thing they see is Mark coming out. No Moon Knight costume or anything, but he's looking at the camera, almost talking to Stephen. Stephen, sadly gets fired from his job and heads back to his apartment, where then he actually wants to discover more about the key and burner phone he found in the previous episode, which takes him to a storage facility where the guy at the front desk recognizes him. He finds the storage facility, and turns out Mark had a hideout. Stashed away in the hideout was weapons, money, clothing, fake IDs, and a bed for him to hide out when he was committing the crimes. And I love the interaction between Stephen and Mark trying to figure out what's going on, and Mark just trying to help Stephen understand that you cannot be in control. I need this. Khonshu, which he mentions a lot, by the way, and the relationship between Mark and Khonshu was spoken very heavily. Mark is telling Stephen that he needs the body more than Stephen does himself because Khonshu and him are on a timeline right now, and there is no time to waste. What I spoke a lot about in the previous video, talking about the first episode, was that how Stephen cannot get away from Mark's past. It's going to be catching up to him, which we see a lot of in this episode. Steve is confronted by the police and apparently Mark's wife. The confrontation between Stephen and Mark ends up with Stephen running out with a duffel bag of Mark's possessions and ends up running into Khonshu, who we actually get to see a lot more of in this episode, and I was very happy about. On the way out, he trips and falls. Then we are introduced to Mark's wife, Lila. Lila is trying to make sense of what's going on. Her and Mark haven't spoken for a few months. They're getting a divorce, apparently, and everything just in her reality is not making sense. But yet she knows what's going on between Mark and Khonshu. She's aware that he can summon the suit. But we do know one thing. Khonshu, Mark, and Lila are all on a mission to stop or prevent something that the goddess Amet is doing, which Arthur is trying to make happen. So we can clearly tell the intentions between Arthur and Mark and everybody in this episode between what their goals are for Amet. Stephen tries taking Lila to his apartment and explain everything, but nothing makes sense to her. This is where the police comes in and takes Mark down for questioning. But the thing is, they don't ever make it to the station. They take him to Arthur Harrow's little city that he fixed himself. The confrontation between Arthur and Stephen was a lot of fun to see because Khonshu was in the back looming over the whole thing while Arthur was talking about Khonshu. Arthur also briefly talks about Mark's relation to Khonshu, kind of talking down Khonshu that he's a child and that he just moves on to the next person, or as they're calling it, Avatar. I found Arthur to be more interesting in this episode because in the first one, we didn't really know much about him. We knew that he was obviously the bad guy and that he had a lot of influence, but this one seemed better because he had knowledge of the Egyptian mythology between Khonshu, Amet, and their ideologies. I like the confrontation between Arthur and Stephen because the way they're talking about the reasons why they followed said people, Khonshu and Amet, is because that's the way they view the world. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Arthur begins to push Stephen for the scarab that we saw in the first episode, where he tried giving it to him with the body and Khonshu were rejecting it and having him walk away. Then Lila comes in holding it high and proud, which we saw in the clip a few weeks back, where Arthur Harrow summons the Jackal again. But the fight between the Jackal and Stephen was very interesting to see, where Steve was trying to make an escape and the Jackal broke in, but Lila couldn't see it, only Stephen. Stephen tries making an escape, and we finally get the Mr. Knight look. Personally, I love that look so much, and knowing that it wasn't because of an extra mission he had to do, but it was actually Stephen's identity and how he wanted to summon the suit, and actually looks super good. I like the interaction between Stephen and Mark in this because the mouths were muffled as if they were both wearing it, and it was so cool to see him trying to fight the thing while wearing the suit itself, and how the crowd perceives Stephen to be just a drunk because no one can see who he's fighting, but he's just swinging around. And of course, the famous rendition of Float Like a Butterfly, Sting Like a Bee. My name is Steven with a V. That was just the funniest and most clever thing to give Steven a personality in this moment. He also has some sort of superhuman strength while wearing the suit, as almost the suit gives him some extra ability, even as Steven and not just Mark itself. Now, as we all know, Moon Knight gains more ability and power as the moon phases. When it's a full moon, he's his most strongest. And the suit up, of course, like we saw before, was still so glorious to see. Where he takes out the crescent darts and starts running away from the jackal, leading him out from where everybody was, and does that sick move where he rotates, grabs him, and pins him down on that statue. Now, for me, this is when the show got really real, where we see Mark communicating with Steven through the broken mirror, and that how Mark is pressured to keep this persona, keep the deal with Khonshu. The interaction with Khonshu and Mark was so brutal to see because we can see how hard this is for Mark. And that if Mark fails Khonshu, the next candidate he's going for is his wife, Lila. And that how Mark doesn't want Lila to be a part of this. He wants her out of the picture. He wants her safe. They did such a good job giving us the moment of a broken man, torn between a decision of what he wants and what he has to do. And the shot where he's just standing alone is so good to see because this is where Mark feels vulnerable, where Mark is, yes, this amazing hitman and mercenary, but he's really also a man that truly cares for people, especially his wife. I hope the show as it goes on doesn't tone this down, that it focuses it as the character study, similar to how we saw with Tony. This show just gets more and more exciting as it goes on, with the score at the end of the credits, the visuals, and the somehow humor running through this whole entire dark series is just so great to see. I hope we get to see more of Mr. Knight in this show because that suit is just so cool to leave it in one episode. And I hope we also get to see more of Mark and Steven kind of coming to terms with what they both have to do, where they make an agreement with Khonshu where if they both stay exactly the same, but they can still pursue the goal that they have in mind, Khonshu will leave Lila alone. I'm super excited to see what happens. I hope we get to see more of Mark in this next episode that's coming out next week. But all I'm going to say is that Arthur's a great villain. He's not just some monocle mustache man where he's like, I want to rule the world. No, he actually has a very specific view tied into the person he's following. I can't get enough of it, and I hope you guys can't either. And that, my friends, will wrap up our review of episode 2 of Moon Knight. If you guys actually enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe so you guys can keep up with what we're posting, and hit the bell for notifications so when I post, you know. As well as leave a comment for what you guys think is going to happen in the 3rd episode, what you liked about this episode, what you didn't like about this episode, and everything in between. Follow us on social media, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, where I post a lot more of my theories, my views, some of the small breakdowns that I like doing, and just keeping up to date on what's going on. Hope you guys enjoy, and as always, welcome to Tu-Vie.